Hello, everyone. Today we will be focusing on networking skills, which is really the next step in this career development process. This past week, we talked a lot about LinkedIn. We talked about how to reach out to alumni, how to make those connections. And this is going to take it another step further, a little bit more about other types of networking and how to prepare for those particular situations. So let's get started. So what we'll be covering today is what networking is exactly, where to begin, strategies on how to build your network, engagement opportunities, how to prepare for a networking event, as well as how to build and maintain relationships long term, because that's really what networking is all about. It's not about establishing short-term relationships per se, but how can you build build and maintain relationships over a longer period of time. All right, so when you think about networking, there are a lot of different assumptions that come up. Take a minute and just jot down what are some fears and potentially roadblocks when you think about networking. For me personally, as an introvert, some of my roadblocks are, will I have enough to say? I'm not as animated as other extroverts might be, so how can I really stand out in a crowd? Maybe I don't like being in large groups of people, and maybe sometimes it's awkward to reach out to a stranger. So again, take a couple of minutes, jot down some things that potentially are fears or potential roadblocks when you think about networking. Go ahead and pause the video. All right, so let's talk about networking. It's conversation with a purpose. I think a lot of times people think it is reaching out to complete strangers, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. When you think about a conversation with purpose, it's a little bit different. This is strategically meeting people for the purpose of building contacts and establishing relationships, hopefully long-term relationships. It's mutually beneficial. It's not just the spotlight is on you or the spotlight's on the employer or professional, but it's mutually beneficial. It's an exchange of information where both parties benefit from the conversation. You would benefit from a professional telling you about what they do, and a professional would benefit about you sharing your personal experience as well. Networking is not so much about networking with everyone, but being strategic about who are you networking with, the right people who can help you with your particular career interests. Did you know that 80% of jobs are found through networking? We've talked a little bit about this in the past, where a lot of jobs simply are not listed anywhere online. So how can you find those opportunities? Mainly through networking. So let's talk about how you can start building your network. When you think about the networking cycle, you really can start at any level in any area of this cycle. For instance, if we start the outreach circle, then you're starting to meet, you're following up with the professional, maintaining that relationship, and then you're starting to target again. It could be that you're more in the target stage. You're identifying who are those professionals you initially want to do outreach to. So regardless of where you are in the cycle, start thinking about this cycle in terms of having a little bit more strategy behind your relationships. A lot of people target, outreach, and meet, and then we barely learn how to follow up and then maintain that relationship. So this really is a cyclical process. So think about this networking cycle, even as setting goals for yourself. As you start meeting people, have you hit all of these different target circles in that particular relationship? All right, so who should you exactly be targeting? We talked a little bit about this past week, thinking about, on LinkedIn, how can you target those very specific alumni? Let's talk about three sets of contacts. So hot contacts, these are people that you currently know. Could be friends, family, faculty, staff, former employers, mentors, anyone that you see on a regular basis, and you don't really mind asking them for a favor. So you're going to be given a list and a handout through Canvas, and I encourage you to use that to start building your tree of contacts. I will give a little bit more instruction in the posting, but that's what that list is for. Warm contacts, these are found within your larger network. So for instance, those LinkedIn alumni connections that we were forming last week, these are those warm contacts. Then you also may have former coworkers or classmates, again, professors, maybe family friends that you don't know as well. And you might sort of need an intermediary of asking for a favor, a potential referral from someone else. So again, start thinking about who do you know that might know someone who potentially could become a warm contact. And then ice cold contacts. These are those random searches that you might do for a particular professional. It could be a random search on LinkedIn or even just Google trying to find professionals in your career area of interest. So think about contacts in terms of hot, warm, and cold, and start thinking about how to strategically reach out to these three different types of individuals. All right, so let's start talking about outreach and engagement. And this is going to tie in obviously a little bit to what we talked about last week with LinkedIn, but make sure your profile is as complete as possible so that as you're connecting with those professionals, they will be able to see sort of who you are, what your experience is, what you're mostly interested in, and then start connecting to those people that you already know. Not just the people in your immediate area, but people who may know someone else. Continue to add new business contacts, especially as you meet them either through class or networking events. It could be to go to a conference. Take time to follow companies and particular jobs, and also join groups related to your areas of career interest. And don't forget, we have LinkedIn headshots, usually 10 to 3. This will obviously change because of the school being put online, but just take this to note for future reference that we normally do headshots during our regular drop-in hours.
If you're watching this, chances are good you want to get a job. You want to go from student to rising star, and you want to avoid eating the same meal over and over and over again. Good news, you're in the right place. That's right, LinkedIn. It's not just for top executives. It's not just for old people with heavy briefcases. It's for you, and it's the perfect place for you to start your professional story. Say you want to get a job in New York City. You've never been there before, but that's okay because you have LinkedIn on your side. You start by creating your profile. You give it love because you know it's what recruiters are looking for day and night. It's your resume that never sleeps. It's your flashing neon sign that says, hire me, for the love of all that is good in this world, hire me. Then you start making connections. Alumni working in New York? Yes. Recruiters at top companies in New York? Yes. Your mom's best friend? Yes. You start imagining whose shoes you want to walk in. You think, wow, this is a lot of deep stuff to consider. You shake yourself out of it and start searching for jobs. Whoa, that's a lot of jobs for students. Time to get down to business. You start to tailor your profile. You start applying. You feel empowered, in control, like you should be CEO. That gives you an idea. You look up all the CEOs of all the companies you want to work at. You see one of them went to your university. Then it hits you. You see a clear path from campus to career. You feel like you can see the future. You wonder if you're psychic. Should you start a hotline? No, back to plan A. You keep tailoring and connecting and applying, and before you know it, you start getting responses. First a few, then more, then an interview, and then you're hired. And that's when the real learning begins.
Okay, so that was just a quick video about LinkedIn. One of my favorite parts of that video is when they say that LinkedIn is basically your resume that never sleeps, and that's true. It's always working on your behalf. So when you think about networking, I want you to think about having a pitch email, being able to reach out to these professionals through LinkedIn or through other ways, through email, even through their company's website. So you want to think about your email in terms of these 3 questions. Who are you and how did you find them? Why are you contacting them and what do you want specifically? And finally, conclusion and contact information so that they know how to reach back out to you. All right, so again, thinking about different types of networks. There's several different types of areas where you might be able to start meeting people, either face-to-face or online. So again, professional associations are really great, especially for those of you wanting to go into more academic or research fields. Volunteer opportunities really indicate your passion, your interest in those particular areas of work. Informational interviews like the ones we are doing for this class. Student organizations and clubs on campus. And of course, all other types of on-campus networking situations when we have them, employer information sessions, career fairs, other types of specific networking events or mixers, as well as mock interviews. So there are lots and lots of different ways to network. So be a little bit more broad in your understanding and put yourself out there a little bit more. Put yourself out of your comfort zone and just try something new. You'd be surprised at who you would meet. All right, so do your research prior to any type of networking. You want to always know who is actually going to attend any type of event or organization or whatever it might be. So always make sure you have a list if possible. Sometimes this list can be provided on the actual website of the event. It could be that, like for instance, if an event is listed in Hire a Niner, we always have contacts listed so you'll know who exactly you will be meeting with. And then take time to research each individual organization of interest to you. So for instance, at a networking event like we normally have with a career fair, we usually have over 150 organizations coming. There's no way you could possibly talk to over 150 recruiters. So start thinking about who are those individual organizations that most interest you, and then prepare for only those. Write down their name and title within the organization, and then use LinkedIn to identify any potential connections. Were they alumni of UNC Charlotte? Do they have a connection with any of the other schools that you've attended, or any of the other groups or particular careers that you're desiring to go into? So start trying to find those connections amongst the people you're interested in connecting with. All right, so when meeting people in person, know what message that you would like to convey. So write at least 3 questions that you potentially could ask an employer about their experience or about the company. Know your skills, and we're about to practice preparing yourself through an elevator pitch. And then also anticipate questions that you might be asked about your field of concentration, and then start practicing them out loud. All right, so we're going to take a couple of minutes. And by turning in the career guide, I want you to be able to fill this sheet out. Turn to page 30 in the career guide. You will notice that there is a form for your elevator pitch. You will basically fill out, hello, my name is, I am currently, for all of you, a graduate student at UNC Charlotte, what your area of study is, what you possibly are looking for, if you know when you might be available to work, what your strengths are, which all of you should have from your Strengths Finder, a couple of your accomplishments, and the fact that you're also interested and involved in certain things here on or off campus. So use this form over the next few minutes to fill this out. You will also find in your brand management plan, and again, I will follow up with instructions on how to complete this activity, but you will find that you also have this same format in your brand management plan that you will need to complete. So now pause the video, take a few minutes, fill this out, and then practice it out loud, or practice it with someone, a family member or friend, just to see how it feels to be able to talk about yourself in this way. Again, pause the video and we'll be right back. Okay, so back to what exactly do I say to employers specifically, or professionals? So really fun conversation starters. These are some of my favorite questions to pose to professionals, but how long have you worked for this organization? What do you specifically do in your role? People do so much more than their job description or job title. So really ask them to talk about the nitty-gritty of what they do. What do you like most about working for this organization? Tell me more about your workplace culture. What advice would you give someone like me who's interested in pursuing a career in your field? Start learning from professionals and experts who've already gone on before you and have tackled some of the different challenges that maybe you don't have to tackle, since you're asking them about how to overcome them. So start thinking about some of the questions that are most meaningful to you. All right, so we've already gone over resumes, but I just wanted to highlight in general, always have a resume ready to go. Especially in networking situations, you will most likely be asked for the most up-to-date resume. So again, make sure that your resume is the most up-to-date with all of your current experiences, your education, skill sets, etc. And just in general, make sure it's 1 page. Again, 2 pages for those of you who have 2 full pages of relevant information. Again, don't use an objective. I think those are optional at this point. Make sure that there are no spelling errors, everything looks consistent. And again, use smaller font. It doesn't have to be large. 10 font is my personal preference. Write align all dates if possible. And also, information should be labeled in reverse chronological order. So make sure all of the most recent experience comes first in each section. All right, so we're going to talk about dress for success briefly. We're going to touch on this again in our interviewing section, but when you think about dress, it's always a little tricky because you don't exactly know what kind of industry you're walking into unless you've done your research. So in general, let's talk about dress. What do you think about this type of dress? Too casual? Too professional? This definitely is too casual. We want to avoid flip-flops, shorts, jeans in general. What about this? In this case, some people would argue, well, she's wearing a dress, she's wearing a blazer, but in this case, she's wearing very bright colors. And so you want to avoid anything that's going to be distracting away from your face. So yes, while she is wearing a dress and tights and a blazer, they're just not appropriate, particularly because of their color. What about this? This definitely aligns more with business professional. So very sleek, very professional looking. You'll notice that suits in general, when you're wearing a suit, you want to stick with dark colors. So dark blacks, navies, and grays. This also is good. Again, for women, you can wear skirts or you can wear slacks. It doesn't matter. And make sure you have closed-toed shoes. Again, a little too casual, not wanting to wear any sports attire or shorts or capris. Definitely not. This is definitely not the way you should go to an interview. The next two images are a little tricky because on one hand, the gentleman at the upper right-hand corner, that is what we consider business casual. So a little bit more casual in the type of fabric he's wearing, but again, very appropriate for a job interview. The lady on the right bottom, yes, she is wearing a skirt and, nicer shoes. However, this is not appropriate for a job interview. Her skirt is too short and her toes are showing. So you do have to think about the styling and the length of some of your clothing to make sure it's appropriate. In general, think about business professional type of clothing being a little bit more dress. So, the jacket, the tie, the blouse, the shoes, etc. It's just a little bit more. Whereas business casual, you don't always have to wear the jacket. Make sure that you don't have any loud jewelry, or some people go back and forth about their hair, but it's really just be maintained, be well kempt. All right, so networking tips in general. Be prepared for some small talk. Okay, you will have small talk in any given situation, so practice these social skills. What are some general things that you could have small talk about that actually interest you? Always be prepared to initiate the conversation. Don't assume that because they are a recruiter or someone in leadership that they're very good at conversating. So be prepared to start the initial conversation using some of those questions that we talked about earlier. When we get back to having a handshake, always make sure you have a firm handshake. For right now though, do the elbow bump. Eye contact, make sure you're always looking them in the eye. This implies confidence and it allows them to see that you're really listening to what they're saying. Be honest about yourself and to the point. Try not to ramble or go off on tangents, but stick to the conversation. Try not to monopolize their time, especially if you can tell that they're having a busy day, or if you're at a networking event and you know other students are waiting to hear from them. Maybe take up a few less of their minutes, but still get the information you came to get. Always get business cards or a reference of some sort before you leave that conversation. Make sure that you have a way to connect with them after that networking event. All right, so in general, I like to point out some networking tips for extroverts as well as introverts. For extroverts, they love networking in general. They really enjoy being around lots of people, meeting new people. So again, you're not going to have any trouble collecting business cards, meeting as many people as you can within the desired field of interest that you have, having and creating a list, but also enjoying meeting new people. You're not prepared to talk to on the list, so going to a different table or connecting with someone you did not originally prepare to speak with is always exciting for you. Use your extroverted energy to take the conversation beyond small talk. Get to the root of your questions a little bit quicker. And then for introverts, again, as introverts, we don't always enjoy big networking situations, but to help us to be able to walk into these more confidently, have a prepared list of who you want to talk to at the event, as well as a list of questions you already have written down. This is so handy. I use this myself all the time. Find commonalities among employers so that you can immediately connect to them. Did they play a sport? Did they go to a particular school? Are they from a specific state? So start thinking about commonalities so it's easy to start that conversation. Again, be prepared for small talk because it will happen. So this is probably going to be the most uncomfortable for you in a networking situation, but as long as you're prepared for it, you'll be able to engage. Be your most extroverted self as possible. You can rest after you do this networking, but make sure that you're your most outgoing as possible so that they can see your enthusiasm for what you really want to do. All right, so after your networking event, you want to make sure that you're sending thank you notes to everyone you talk to, as well as connecting them on LinkedIn. You'll find some examples of thank you notes in our career guide, as well as the pages on LinkedIn about how to connect with alumni. All right, so let's talk about building and maintaining relationships. So this is where we usually have the most challenge after a networking event. So actually, reaching out and keeping that relationship going so it's mutual and beneficial for both parties. So some things you might want to think about is you could always email them articles, you could email cards or emails just to say hello. I mean, just to keep up to date with what they're doing. You can always update your contact on your progress every few months or as things happen, especially for those of you who might connect with a recruiter early on in your degree. And because you're not going to be graduating for another year or two, you still want to keep in touch with this recruiter so that when you're close to graduation, you can continue that relationship and learn more about the current opportunities. Again, if you hear about their company in the news or you hear about them maybe winning an award or something, you can always reach out and congratulate. Check in to see if they'll be attending any conference or any industry event that you might be attending. And anytime you can ask if they have an opportunity for you to help them, they always appreciate that. So always think about paying it forward. You're getting great information from them. How can you help them back in return and pay it forward? All right, so just in general, that was just a quick overview about networking. Remember that in our class specifically, part of this class is learning how to network and getting that one informational interview, connecting with alumni on LinkedIn. So I really encourage you to step outside your comfort zone, talk to someone maybe that you would not normally talk to, choose someone for your informational interview that you would normally not desire to maybe interview initially because maybe it's just a little bit of a stretch, but I encourage you to step outside of your comfort zone. Please check Canvas for all of the instructions on this particular week, and thank you for watching.